Hello everyone and welcome to the Turquoise Challenge in collaboration with the absolutely amazing and super talented Dina Tollefson. If you haven't subscribed to her already, please subscribe to her below. I will leave a link. She is amazingly talented and her paintings are absolutely beautiful. I also took part in her Green Gold Challenge last time and there were so many wonderful and amazing artists who took part, as I'm sure there will be in this challenge too. In this video I'm going to be doing this painting of this little fawn right here. And this idea is actually based on a painting that was my very first oil painting. So I'm taking the similar theme of that painting and I'm sort of doing like a similar idea. So I do hope you like it. In actual fact, the theme that was in the first painting I ever did was all about a boy who had failed his exams and he ran into the woods and into the forest to seek some kind of solace, and it was at that point that he found great comfort in the nature around him, the flowers, the trees, the birds, a peacock and a fox, I believe, in that case, also some little fishes as well. So this was a concept that I really explored in that painting, but I feel like I'd like to explore it again. So in this case I just had this idea of a fawn itself seeking comfort from the development that's happening in the forest, seeking comfort in the nature and the beautiful landscape around it. So I hope you liked this theme. Now I'm sure you're probably thinking there isn't that much turquoise in this painting, but I'm going to add it now, and this was intentional so that I would be able to do so on camera so you can see the sort of end process. I also had a little bit of trouble with this painting because halfway through when I was painting it, and I have really enjoyed painting it by the way, but halfway through I started to feel like it was becoming a bit too overcrowded. So there's so many trees and so much foliage and flowers and that sort of type of thing. So I desperately wanted to rectify that and make sure that all the different elements stood out. So I'm going to show you how you can fix a bit of a problem like this, and one of the best ways to do it is to add contrast, and so I'm going to do that to bring out all the colours and to hopefully make sure that the focal point of the painting, which is somewhere over here, yes this, it will stand out. Incidentally, just before we begin, I apologise if I look a little bit frazzled and weird, but it is so hot in the UK right now. It is just literally like unbelievably hot, and for us in the UK we are proper lightweight, so some people aren't, but some of us who are proper sort of British, when there's like the slightest bit of heat there tends to be a heck of a lot of weather warnings and people worrying about overheating. And I think in a lot of countries they probably look at us and be like, these people are amateurs, this is only 32, 33 degrees, why are they having these warnings? But actually this week it was genuinely hot. Like I think it got up to around 37 degrees, which is really bad for us because most of the time in England it will be sunny for a few days and then it will just rain and go cold again or windy, and so we have sun rain like that. So we don't really have extended periods of intense heat in the way that it's been this week. So I found it really difficult to paint, but I did still paint because I needed to get this done, and I also felt like I wasn't quite happy with it as well at certain points, so I wanted to make sure that I got in all different types of details. But at the same time my progress was so slow. I was like a tortoise painting, and even to do the simplest tasks took a heck of a long time. So it made me realise how amazing people who live in super hot countries, how amazing they are, because how do they do it? How do they get on? Of course I know that many people who live in hot countries have air conditioning, but air conditioning in the UK, because it's not very hot very often, it doesn't really occur. So so you just get these really hot places, hot rooms, hot trains, hot tubes, and yeah, it's sort of the tension mounts. So let's start with this, and I'm going to try and show you as much explanation as I can. When Dina mentioned that the challenge was going to be a turquoise challenge, I confess I was overjoyed because turquoise is one of my favourite colours. I just adore any kind of blue. Blue just, it's such an amazing colour for me. I feel it's in every single painting of mine, and I just love the way that it looks. I don't really know why. So I think we're naturally drawn to certain colours, and there may not be any real explanation, but I can't find the reason. I just am naturally drawn to it, and so I was super happy about it. And it's just a really, I think possibly it's something to do with the sky, possibly because I'm a bit of a daydreamer. I love looking at the sky, so that could be the reason. And I like to really, with this particular oil paint, I like to really blend because it's got such an amazing blendability that, I'm using Gamblin by the way, I should have actually mentioned that before I started talking about how great it was. I think it has an amazing blendability, and you can really create a really nice soft finish with it. And it's also almost, I wouldn't say necessarily, it's not necessarily therapeutic, but it gives you this nice feeling when you're constantly blending. It makes you feel relaxed if you do it softly. Generally speaking, I'm not very relaxed when I'm painting, to be honest, because I'm always worried about how the painting's going to turn out and constantly thinking about various aspects of the painting and whether it's working or not, and if it's going the right way that I want it to. So it's not that fun necessarily, but the actual, when I've put the colours together and when it gets to the point where I'm just softly blending, I think that's probably the most relaxing point during the painting process. And this type of sky with the moon in the centre and then just the darker colours coming off is something that I have done many times in my art. I love looking at the sky at night. I'm one of those stargazing type people. If the stars are out, I will, I've often see the stars when I'm coming back from somewhere and I'm either walking down the road or coming into where my home is, and I will look up at the sky, and that's when I start sort of inspecting everything. And I don't really know very much about constellations, but I always look for the moon, and that, something about the moon I find incredible. I just find it fascinating, and so I like to paint a moon in very often. I actually wasn't planning to paint a moon in here, but when I realised that the rest of the painting didn't have quite as much of the turquoise feel that I wanted, then I thought a night sky with a moon will really add that brighter blue, sort of bring the eye in, which is something that I want. So I keep thinking that's a dark blue, but actually it's a black, so I need to avoid that area. And I'm just building up the colour like so, and making sure that I probably won't add stars in. I know that some people like to do this incredible technique where they flick their brush and they can get the stars in by just like flicking it. I have tried that, and of course I got it all over myself, the paint I mean. And whilst I do quite like that technique, for some reason I don't mind painting in all the stars. It doesn't take me very long. It doesn't take as long as you might think, and so I just tend to do that, but probably won't put any stars in this because because this painting is sort of, the actual angle of it is somewhat at a distance. I think that stars would be better to left out and just get that real feel of the night with the blues and getting that sense of atmosphere without actually painting in every single element. I think it's already quite full with stuff, as you can see, so I just don't want to overload it with more and more stuff. So you can tell that I am full of amazing insight in this video, and as I paint I will also fill you in on the detail that you may already know if you are an overseas viewer, that we have a new Prime Minister. And so it's been a heat wave and there's been a new Prime Minister all in a week. And it's been a little bit confusing. I feel like I'm quite confused. I don't know why. It's just that sort of disorientating effect of the heat, and then constant announcements about one Prime Minister leaving. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we already knew this. We already knew that Theresa May was going to leave, and we already knew that chances were that Boris Johnson was going to be elected. However, the whole kind of ceremony and the way everything happened very quickly, it was very intriguing. No, that's wrong. It was very confusing. Yes, confusing. But now it's back to normal again. So we're just kind of getting used to the new situation. And there we are. We've had a Tory government for so long now. It's almost like we're just used to the Tories. I'm not going to talk too much about politics, but I'm certainly somebody who over the years has lost a lot of faith, and I think many people have. I've lost a lot of faith in the government, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm not holding out too much hope, because when you get hope for anything in politics, I feel you get disappointed. So as you can see, I'm filling in the areas here. This entire background was purple initially. That was just the underpainting, though. I was always planning to paint over it, and it's always nice to do an underpainting because you get a sense of exactly how your painting is going to look. But also it is really nice when you're layering up to have multiple layers, and I really do like adding multiple layers into my work, so it adds quite a bit of dimension. I did make a video about underpainting. If you are interested in underpainting, then you can check that out if you want to know more. This wasn't a Creuset, which was the underpainting video that I made, which is essentially a black and white underpainting. This was kind of a more neutralish purpley, but at the same time it was quite similar to having a grey underpainting. It was basically a greyish purple, so it was a similar idea. And I know so many people probably think or wonder why I paint this way, but we all have our own quirks, because I'm just filling in the background, and a lot of people would have painted the entire background and then painted the trees on top, but I don't know why I do it this way. I like making my life hard. I never do things the easy way. So I'm really trying to get a strong colour here, and here I will use some black just to again add the contrast to make sure that everything can start to really stand out. Because ultimately I'm not against using black, I absolutely love using it. This black that I'm using is not a very strong black. You can get much stronger ones. I like strong black, and the more soft ones as well. They're both very versatile, you can use them for different situations, and any colour I think you can use for something. The only types of colours that I don't use very much, actually, funnily enough, are much more sort of dark greys, just because I just don't ever really take a dark grey out of the tube. I bought one a while ago and thought, oh, this would be brilliant, it'll save me loads of time, and then actually didn't end up using it because I just had always black and white on my palette, so just mixed them together and created grey, so that ended up being a useless colour for me, which is a shame really, but there's certainly nothing wrong with getting your grey straight from the tube. I just think I'm maybe too lazy to even go and get it, which it's not surprising. If you have a tough time painting trees, it's not the easiest thing. I think people think that it's very easy to paint trees, but it's important to make sure that they all look different, and unless you sort of like that uniform look. But if you want to create interesting trees and paint trees regularly, the best thing to do is just to meet some trees. Meet some trees, they're very friendly. Go outside and observe them really. It's funny because I grew up in a more, I was going to say more foliage rich and more green place. So that's why I feel I tend to paint much more landscape and sea type paintings, because I've been surrounded by a lot of nature, and I think people love to paint what they see a lot. Painting, very similar to any sort of creative activity, is based a lot on observation. And so whatever you absorb, that's way too dark, so I'm just going to add that. Whatever you have in your subconscious, you sort of tend to spill out onto your canvas. And I do sometimes use references if I don't know how to paint something. So the fawn was obviously, well, I wouldn't say obviously, because some people can paint fawns from their imagination, and some people can paint everything from their imagination. But I needed to use a reference for the fawn because I wanted to make it look relatively like a fawn as opposed to looking like just a random blob. And I don't think that I love deer, but I don't see them enough to be able to paint them entirely from memory, but I have painted them a fair amount. So I just accessed a wonderful resource called Copyright Free Images, and there are some amazing sites. I only tend to use one or two sites, and I'm really fortunate because I know a lot of really amazing photographers. And so quite often, particularly when it comes to wild animals, I will, because they're my relatives, I just borrow their photos and I'm like, thank you, I like that cheetah, I'll have that please. So I tend to use some of their kind of images that they've taken because they give me permission. I prefer to do that or to paint whatever it is from actual real life if I can't imagine it. Quite often skies and forests are straight from the imagination because they're just things I've painted so many times, and plus I kind of get this vision of exactly what I want when it comes to the landscape and exactly the colours. And so I'm able to just create and conjure that myself. But if it's a specific animal, particularly a wild animal, then I will use either a reference from a relative who is an amazing photographer, which I have a few, I'm very fortunate, or I will use a copyright-free image. I tend to only use 2 different websites. I do use some others. I always make sure though 100% that it is copyright free, because you don't want to steal someone's photography. After all, photography is such an amazing skill, and it's so mean to just grab someone else's photograph and be like, I'll have that please, that's mine, and translate it into a painting. I just think it's unfair. But I wish that I had like wild animals outside my window. I wouldn't like to approach them necessarily, but then I could paint them directly from life. I always feel directly from life, at least in my experience for myself, I find my art is better when it's directly from life or from my imagination. But you can't have everything. It's very difficult to have be able to access all the elements that you want to paint in your paintings, so copyright free photography fills that gap, I suppose. But much like the last painting I created, which was of the pirate ship, that was the water in that painting I had to get a copyright free image for, because I felt like I really wanted that element to be super detailed because it was in the foreground. The water in the far background, the sort of violet coloured water that was sweeping away into the distance, that was all from my imagination, because the detail was kind of lacking in that. It was just a kind of flowing sea, which is very easy to paint. But when it came to the waves in the foreground, I really wanted them to actually look like they had depth and that you were right there within the water. And so I used a copyright-free image, and it was a photograph of the water, and I changed it completely. It had a lot of birds in it, and I was thinking maybe I should add the birds, but then when I looked at the final composition, I felt like it was enough. At that point I knew when to stop, and I feel like with this painting, at least initially, I mean before, I just got a bit too carried away, but now I've reined myself in, and I'm just adding in the magical final touches, really, so I hope it's magical. So I really hope that you enjoyed this painting and listening to me ramble on. I've really enjoyed creating this painting, and I just adore joining in with these wonderful challenges. I completely forgot to mention that I'm painting on a canvas panel which is of medium tooth, so you can see the tooth when you go up close to the panel. I know some people don't really like that, but I love it. I really like the way my art looks on textures, and I didn't used to actually. I used to prefer a smoother finish, but in recent times I really think that my work, specifically to me and not to other people, not necessarily to other people, because I feel like other people, when I see their work, I think it looks so beautiful and it's really smooth, but I feel my style suits a more textured canvas. So this is what I'm working on now. It was pretty expensive, but I always feel like I just end up, for some reason, falling in love with the most expensive stuff, the most expensive materials, and so the paintings will probably be a little bit more infrequent but more detailed, because I can't necessarily buy a ton of these in one go, because then I will be bankrupt. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I will add a little bit more flowers and just fill in a tiny bit that I haven't done there, and then this painting will be complete. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you loved this. I hope you liked or love this turquoise challenge. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course, if you're new, and take care, guys.